I'm Robin Gagnon.
And I'm Eric Gagnon, and we sell restaurants. We started the nation's largest restaurant brokerage firm. We sell restaurants over a decade ago. You can find us online at WeSellRestaurants.com.
Catch our radio show every week when we bring on board the best in the industry to talk about topics that are top of mind for the restaurant business. Remember, tweet your own questions about anything in the industry to our Twitter handle, Sell Restaurants, or post on our Facebook page, facebook.com/WeSellRestaurants. We may choose your question for an entire show topic, but either way, we'll follow up on social media.
Our goal is to satisfy your appetite for acquisition, feed the need for restaurant reality, and serve up a recipe for business success. We go out into the restaurant industry to assemble top authorities on topics trending in this fast-paced world filled with both risk and success to share the inside scoop.
We are very grateful to be joined today by two leading authorities who are going to discuss controlling food costs. Now, many would say that's the key to a restaurant operator's profitability. Our guests will weigh in and provide their tips, tools, and techniques to keep food costs in line and deliver more profit to the restaurant's bottom line. Joining us today is DB Libby Libhart. Libhart has over 30 years of experience in the loss prevention industry, working in both the retail and restaurant industries before launching his own company, Loss Busters. Libby served as the Senior Director of U.S. Security and Safety for McDonald's Corporation with over 14,000 locations in the U.S. He entered the quick-serve restaurant industry with Taco Bell and subsequently Yum Brands. Libby and his team have saved millions of dollars for companies with development and implementation of sound loss control and crime prevention principles. In all, he has increased profitability and created a safer and more secure environment for both customers and employees. Libby provides daily tips on restaurant security, safety, and loss prevention at his Twitter handle, @LossBusters. Libby, welcome aboard.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Libby. And we also are very fortunate today to be joined by our friend, Brandon Sadler. Brandon has worked in the restaurant industry for 20 years. He was the owner-manager of Digger Sports Grill, a highly successful restaurant in Lawrenceville, Georgia, for 9 years. Then he sold his restaurant and began working as a freelance consultant. Creating successful restaurant concept, Brandon has now created a consulting program at Cisco Atlanta to help their customers succeed. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's kick this off. Libby, I want to start with you. I love the name of your company, Loss Busters, and I know you increase profitability through loss prevention, and we're talking primarily about food costs here. Can you give our listeners an idea of exactly what loss prevention is and what your company does?
Sure. Loss prevention is basically a comprehensive approach to decreasing the vulnerabilities of a restaurant or retailer, and that may be in the form of security, safety, loss controls, and those processes within a restaurant.
Excellent.
Brandon, you work for, if I'm not mistaken, for one of the world's largest broadline food distributor in the world. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. It is the largest broadline distributor in the world.
Wow. And how is your company able to gauge the food costs for countries all over the world? Is there a specific formula our listeners should follow in order to determine their food cost?
Well, by and large, most operators will take, not necessarily what their usage is, but what their purchases are and divide them by their sales. We know that a true food cost is usage, but a widely accepted or widely calculated way is just what they purchased by what they sold.
Do you guys see that, like I know a lot of times we see as restaurant brokers, paper goods, in or out? What is your rule as in Cisco for that?
That's always the big debate. My rule is pick away and stick with it. If your target food cost is 31% without paper, then make sure you separate paper. If you don't want to take the time to separate paper purchases and just build that into your model, build that into your target goals, and make sure your target food cost goals or cost goals are realistic.
Libby, let me ask you this. From a loss prevention perspective, what are some techniques a restaurant operator should be aware of that could negatively affect their food costs?
Well, I think Brandon mentioned the first thing is to establish targeted goals for food cost. A lot of the prevention efforts, of course, revolve around taking in the proper inventory, making sure that the counts are accurate, making sure there's someone responsible for inventory, and controlling the back door, controlling the cash register, because believe it or not, much of the food cost can be traced to cash handling.
Ah, that's very interesting. And I know you have a really lengthy history in some of those controls. Do you have a super tip that you would pass out, for example, just that control of the back door? What would you say to an operator starting out today? Listen, if you were going to exercise the right level of control over your business, this is the one thing you should do.
Well, I think the first thing you establish is what are the policies and procedures and standards that you expect. So if the employees must know what those are, and you also have to audit for compliance. So if you have a backdoor control, who has the keys? Do you change it every time there's a change in store management? Because if you haven't changed the keys or the combination to your safe, someone that used to be managing your business is now selling used cars down the street, still have access to your building and safe. So those are just a few tips, as far as key control in the back door.
That's interesting because in our book, Appetite for Acquisition, we talk about in our final chapter, Now You Own a Restaurant, Now What? And one of the first things we say is get control over everything, change the alarm codes, change the keys, because somebody's girlfriend from 3 managers ago still has access to your back door. Brandon, how do you weigh in on that?
I think you're absolutely spot on. There's a lot of things that can affect the food costs. Shrinkage theft is number one on my list. Portioning is number two, and all those things are they're food cost killers.
That's good. We talk about how we establish a number, establish policies and procedures. Now you talk about some of the pitfalls that could cost some money to an operator, but how do I pick my number? I see so many operators out there. I can see 10 different hamburger concepts out there. And one says, my food cost should be 28. The other one says, well, I should be at 32. The other one, no, we're under 35. We're happy. Brendan, how do you reconcile that? Because, there seems to be so many numbers for the same kind of establishments out there.
Sure. The problem that we have is there's a lot of operators out there that are chasing a fictitious number. Everybody's chasing a number. They the first question I get when I work with our customers at Cisco is, what should my food cost be? And the answer is I don't know that answer. We can find that answer, but there is no magic number that you can stick on a wall and say, that's my food cost. So the best and easiest way to do that is to take a look at the menu. Let's take a look at what we're selling. Let's maybe pull the top 15 items that we sell, our most popular 15 items, and do a physical plate cost and run a weighted average, and then we can develop what we call a theoretical food cost. From that theoretical food cost, we can arrive at a realistic target.
So, Libby, you were with McDonald's for a long time, and I think in the fast food industry, what Brandon just described it moves a lot more from theoretical to implementation because, there's very specific programs, very specific food. So then it parlays more into that second idea, which is you have to audit and be sure that you stay on what that targeted food cost is. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think thrown in there is, again, I think the cash handling performance really weighs in the food cost, and I think it's a hidden item when, as I refer to it, the usual suspects, the portioning and yields, the food cost target number, the inventory controls, proper documentation of waste, all those things are the usual suspects in managing food costs. But what gets buried in all that is, again, the cash handling aspect of it. So, for example, you could have a great inventory control in the back, but if your cashiers are manipulating the cash register, for example, they do voids, refunds, comps, those kinds of things, because if a cashier has a direct shortage, let's say $10 or $20, everybody becomes alarmed. They research it, they find out what happened, and they discipline. But the problem is that if the cashier manipulates all that, or the server, and they hide the cash theft through those voids or comps or other means of manipulating the POS system, that directly affects food costs because the food is going out and the sale is either never rung or is negated later through a void or a comp. So that directly affects food costs, and again, it's something that they don't realize anytime.
And I would say that the more sophisticated that the POS systems get, the more creative employees get in finding ways around them.
Well, yeah, it's not really rocket science. I think they hide it, but if the operator is not disciplined in looking at either the exception reports or the POS reports that come out, they're really lacking in controlling the food cost arena.
Brandon, your thoughts on that?
I absolutely agree 100%. Kind of a funny thing I like to mention to new restaurateurs, and it kind of sounds bad, but I tell new restaurateurs that when you get into the business, if you don't know how to steal from yourself, you're the only one in that building that doesn't. And I hate to paint that, that with a broad brush, but and I'm sure Libby will attest to this. You have to have controls in place. You have to set expectations, and you have to you have to monitor.
That old mantra: inspect what you expect.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I wrote a column not too long ago, and it was titled "Why My Employees Won't Steal From Me: The 5 Myths." And the very first one is they won't steal because I have great employees, or they won't steal from me because they like me. So those are 2 of the 5. And again, it's either naive or they just refuse to believe that anyone would steal from them because they don't have those inspections and audits in place.
That's a very interesting comment. Share with you guys a quick story. We did a closing one time, and they announced to the staff the day of the closing that there was a new owner, and 3 employees ran out the door. Literally ran out the door when they announced a new owner because they were so scared that they would get caught stealing because they were stealing so much from the current owners. This is such a true thing. Oh, and the guy, the seller was like, "Oh, I got such great employees." Exactly what you just said, Libby. That is so true that you have that that kind of things happening in your restaurants. And Brendan, you mentioned about menu costing, menu engineering. We see. I know as a broker, I always kind of look at futures and dairies and poultries and beef and coffee and different things. And prices. We're in a very interesting time as far as commodities of food going, and we see prices all over the board, up and down and everything. So describe menu engineering. We hear that a little bit now. It's kind of buzzword that's growing. And talk to us about menu engineering. How can you offset some of that fluctuation in cost? Because if I keep selling chicken wings for the same price, I want to lose money, like you talk about maintaining margins. Can you talk educate a little bit our listeners about that? Absolutely.
It all kind of goes back to what we were talking earlier about what is your theoretical food cost, and of course your theoretical food cost doesn't necessarily have to reflect the highest cost item on your menu. If, for instance, I have a seafood house and my highest food cost item is a plate of crab legs. I want to sell a plate of crab legs for $30 because I get a big ring, but that plate of crab legs might cost me $20. I would much rather sell the tilapia pasta or what have you. The same thing is it's that line of thinking when we go through menu engineering is where do you put your most profitable or your signature items? If I were opening up a seafood house, the crab legs would be on the back of the menu, maybe buried in a corner. I want to sell crab legs, but if you come to my place, you're going to find them. I want you to read 5 or 6 other menu items before you get to that item. One of my favorite examples of this is the wing cost used to go up, and there was a wing place that put a menu item on there that for $199.99, and it was 20 wings and a bottle of Dom Perignon, and it was a joke. But what happened is after you read that $200 menu item, you go down to the next section and read what the regular price of their wings are. It no longer seems that bad.
So that wasn't their number one item on the menu.
That's exactly right. So there's a lot of tricks like that. There's eye gaze patterns that you can look at and really make sure that you're putting, in front of your customers what you where you want to drive your sales.
That is so interesting. And that kind of goes back to employees again. So it's employee controls, but it's also training of employees. So Libby, weigh in on how that factors into this entire discussion.
Well, I think when you have a food cost goal, do all the employees know what the food cost targets are? And then, the training involved in that is what's in it for them. And I think the current employee staffs really want to know what's in it for them. So involve them in how they can control food costs, how they can gain profitability in a restaurant, audit for compliance, and then reward and recognize their efforts, whether they hit the food cost targets or the cash control performance or the inventory control performance or the audit scores. Reward them for the effort in helping them control food costs. But they have to know what's in it for them, and they have to know what the goals are.
You just mentioned rewards, incentive. Talk to us about what do you see out there as some type of rewards. I can think of a million things, but what do you see out there as best practice? It seems to be really making an impact into your in your staff.
Well, it's kind of simple, really. The people love to hear their own name in a positive way. So, the sincerity of, hey, you did a great job, or you reward the team and you have a little outing, or you have a special meal brought in for them, or you do a little, rewards like a small token, like a little gift card to a coffee shop or a local bowling alley, or some kind of gift card to a big box store, something like that that's really appreciated, and it's not all that expensive.
So no need for a 60-inch plasma TV with a full trip expense paid to Hawaii, right?
Nope. A great job, and being sincere about it will go a long way.
Very nice. Brandon, you see any kind of similar things in some of your clients that you see out in the Cisco world?
You know what? I agree. I think the having an incentive out there for the staff is key. Making sure that they're aware of what the goals are. And one of the most creative incentives I think I've ever seen was an operator took 15 scratch-off lottery tickets. He had 15 steaks to sell that night. And somewhere in the beginning of that night, a server sold a steak, scratched that ticket off, and won $50. Well, guess what? Those other steaks, whatever steaks were 12 steaks that were left over, they didn't last long. They were sold out within the hour. And of course, you can't pick the winners, but anything that kind of generates excitement and makes it fun for the staff is key.
That's a great idea, actually, and you're right. You it almost feels like you want to seed the pot to make that happen early on.
That's exactly right.
Tell me, we talked about what your food cost should be, but there's also a lot of difference between somebody who's running a taco restaurant, a sandwich shop, and then a full-service steakhouse, and what the complexity of that's going to make up that food cost. And the element of meat is going to make a huge difference in their bottom line, correct?
Absolutely.
How do you recommend that people overcome if they have, for example, a specific concept like a wing restaurant? Do you recommend that they go into long-term contracts to stabilize costs on something that they're going to use over and over and over again?
If that's an option, absolutely. If they can set pricing. But what I see typically is that a lot of the commodity pricing is very difficult to gauge. The beef market has been out of control. Coming up on the Super Bowl, wings are going to be out of control. So you just kind of always kind of keep your eye on the prize, so to speak. Let's reevaluate what our theoreticals are every quarter. If they get out of whack, and we know that in our business model, my business can't make money if my food cost rises above 35%, then hey, let's either raise the price or let's put out some deals. Maybe we run a 2-for-1 boneless wing, and we control our cost that way through, deals or menu engineering or, ultimately price changing if it gets to that point.
Good advice. Libby, you work with, fast food, quick casual, different types of restaurants. And I mean, as you go higher in pricing, we start talking about family dining and up, you see a lot more credit cards, and you talk a lot about cash flow, cash management, cash protection today on the show. Do you have some advice on some best practice maybe for somebody that deals more with credit card and how to see how they actually could be potentially having some funny business going on in the staff?
Yeah, of course. One of the phenomenons that are occurring over the last 7-8 years is a fraud scheme called skimming. And skimming is using a credit card and cloning it. So, for example, a cashier at a fast food restaurant works virtually in isolation at a drive-thru, for example, or a server has access to the credit card when it goes back into the kitchen to ring in the sale. So when that card is used, we have cashiers that either are planted or are recruited by organized crime rings to capture. They're given a skimmer, a portable skimmer that fits in their pocket, and they skim the credit card, through the POS system, and then they also skim it through the skimmer that they take out of their pocket. That skimmer records all of the information from the customer on the mag stripe on the back. That card can then be cloned or duplicated and used to purchase other things like, diamonds and shoes and electronics, something that's really resellable on eBay for quite a profit. Then, the manager doesn't know, or the owner doesn't know for months maybe that the credit card has been skimmed, and there's complaints coming in from different credit card customers through the bank, and it's only through the common point of purchase at a particular bank where the credit card was issued that they find this out. So by then, the cashier or the server is long gone. And it amounts to millions of dollars over the last several years, and the victim is actually the consumer and the bank, because the bank will pay off the credit card for the consumer. And if it continues regularly at the same location, the location is in jeopardy of losing their credit card purchase privileges.
Wow, that is definitely a horror story to keep in mind. So it goes back to, again, the fundamentals, making sure that when you're doing your hiring, you do background checks. Once the employees are in place, oversight, monitoring, coaching, and having a video system. I mean, how many restaurants today don't have a video system in place? It's a rare number, I would say, Brandon, even on the back door as you're bringing in the food. A lot of those stores have cameras in place today, correct?
Absolutely. Surveillance cameras are a huge part of the restaurant business nowadays.
Libby, do you have any thoughts on that management of the video cameras? Because the one thing I would say is I see a lot of operators that buy all the systems, but then they don't pull the POS exception report, or they don't look at the video and manage the oversight. And we've got just a few seconds for you to weigh in on that.
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. I think if you have a great camera system, but if you never review anything, all it does is collect dust. So you have to tie that in somehow. For example, you can tie your POS system with a camera systems and alarm the back door, for example, that every time the back door is open unauthorized, it'll pull up on the camera system, and it's like a exception reporting kind of system. The
Perfect.
Other thing is there's electronic monitoring through the POS. There's software now that can be attached to the POS system that will monitor what your standards are as far as your voids, refunds, comps, no sales, average check, all those kinds of things.
Hold that thought for us, Libby, and we'll be back after a short commercial break. We need to take just a moment for a timeout. We Sell Restaurants represents the largest restaurant brokerage company in the nation based on the number of listings, transaction count, and volume. We are franchising nationwide. We have offices throughout the Southeast and would like to bring one to a market near you. This is Eric and Robin Gagnon. We are the Restaurant Brokers. Stay tuned for more after this quick break.